Senator Barrasso.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for being here today. We had a briefing last week that many of us attended on the committee on basically who's helping Russia and what roles there are in that. And I wanted to go along that area of questioning because I'm concerned about China's support for our adversaries. Clear China's actively helping both Russia and Iran evade U.S. sanctions. In fact, oil revenues from China are propping up Russian and Iranian economies. They get to buy them at a discount, so China benefits from that, and then Iran and Russia get the money from China. I view China as using Russia as a wrecking ball. China using Russia as a wrecking ball. Iran right now is exporting almost 1.3 million barrels of oil to China every day. When there's supposed to be sanctions in place, the Treasury Secretary says, well, they can't do any more, but the New York Times pointed out just how much oil we're allowing, that the U.S. is allowing, and the sanctions that are being evading. The Chinese Communist Party providing the materials, the technology, the components that Russia and Iran need to wage their wars. So it just seems to me the administration has failed to prevent China from purchasing Russian and Iranian energy resources. Do you agree?
So first of all, let me just underscore, I completely accept your proposition. Increasingly, we're seeing a group of nations of aggrieved actors that are challenging the United States and its partners globally, and that includes China, Iran, North Korea, occasionally others associated with that effort. My own sense is the most important arena, Senator, that we need to contest that, frankly, is currently in Ukraine. And you mentioned this, but what China has done in supporting the Russian defense industrial base is a subject of deep concern. Now, we've sanctioned hundreds of firms, but the most important sanctions, frankly, are around financial institutions. And I would just have you note that if you look at the trajectory that Europe has traveled in just 8 to 10 months, 8 to 10 months ago, almost no mention of what China is doing in Russia. Look at the NATO statements that took place in Washington with many senators supporting that effort and being deeply engaged in the 75th anniversary. Increasingly, Europe is on side and taking their own steps with respect to sanctions, and I believe that this is an arena that our efforts are paying off. I think it is absolutely clear what you're describing, this association between Russia, North Korea, China, and Iran, increasingly purposely challenging us everywhere. I think our primary answer, yes, we have taken sanctions, but Senator, I would tell you that the most important thing that we have done is build a comparable group of allied nations working together. So I would just simply say, not only is NATO probably stronger than ever before, I think you have to give credit to the previous administration focusing on investing in the military, and we've followed through with that. And a lot of countries are now at 2%, well over half, approaching 2/3. It's deeply important. The connections, though, between Europe and the Indo-Pacific, what countries are supporting Ukraine to the hilt now? Japan, South Korea, Australia. This is unprecedented, and that's largely through the support and encouragement of the United States. So I would simply say that I think the best remedy to the challenges that you accurately describe is our ability to work with allies and partners. Earlier in the discussion, we talked about bringing new partners into the fray, countries like India, Vietnam, others in Southeast Asia. I'm proud of the work we've done in the Philippines. But this is something that we're going to have to contest across the board.
Well, let me just add to that, because I agree with what you're saying there. I mean, I view China as the puppet master here, pulling the strings with what's happening in Iran and North Korea, as well as Russia in their efforts. And the concern is that with our involvement in a number of locations around the world, whether it's with Ukraine, whether it's in Israel, that this is an effort by China to ultimately have us engaged in a number of places and ultimately make it easier for them to take Taiwan, which I believe is one of their single goals.
So I would just say this, though, the relationship between these authoritarian countries is very complex, Senator. And I would only offer to you is don't underestimate Russian agency here. Putin is a master at even playing the weak hand. He has his own interests. He's been very effective at maneuvering China in this respect. But I would simply say each are playing their, subtly trying to advance their interests. For the United States, we need to realize that our associations are deeper. They're based on democracy largely, people to people, a large consensus of the people that elect the leadership. These countries are animated by leaders who are distrustful, often deeply distrustful, and they're often subtly maneuvering against each other. Like, I'll give you an example. China and Russia are competing now for influence in North Korea, and China is anxious about some of the steps that Russia has taken with North Korea. China is competing with Russia in the Arctic and the stands. It doesn't mean that there's a division or gulf, but it just means that there is a complex diplomacy among these various countries that are aggrieved by us, and we have to keep that in mind as we construct our own diplomacy towards them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.